Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Takhtani, or otherwise known as Mrs. T, and you are watching the Globalization introduction video on the New York State Global Regents Prep website. So I first wanted to kind of introduce to you guys an acronym to help you remember the effects of globalization. The acronym is known as FEES, or F-E-E-S. Fees is easy to remember because when you have to pay a fee, it involves making a payment of some sort, and the main effect of globalization has to do with certain areas of the economy. So that's how I remember fees. Fees stands for foreign policy, environment, economic, and social effects of globalization. I'm now going to describe what this all means and some more things about globalization, which is the process in which national economies, politics, and cultures become interconnected or interdependent, as we would say. So now I'm going to go over the acronym FEES to kind of explain a little bit more about this globalization process. So in the area of foreign policy, in our globalized age, foreign policy has become extremely complicated with the development of weapons of mass destruction and with the emergence of international terrorism. As you know, there have been many wars and conflicts and terrorist acts that have occurred in our recent present, and so an element of our foreign policy has to be about working with other countries to kind of prevent these types of actions. It has also become increasingly difficult to enact certain foreign policy measures because of the, changing nature of national security. National security, or the protection of our nation, ensuring our well-being, our right to have economic prosperity, and physical safety has become increasingly tied to international security. So when you have foreign countries who are taken over by people who may not have our best interests at heart, the United States takes an interest in that. And so in the areas of foreign policy, globalization has dramatically changed the way that we do business, so to say. And moving on to business, one of the E's in fees stands for the economic effects of globalization. And this is probably the most important area to remember in this entire acronym because our economy in the United States has become increasingly interconnected or interdependent on the global economy. Countries have worked together in order to promote economic prosperity in both countries or lower economic barriers, all of which I'm sure you're familiar with. NAFTA, for example, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And the EU, for example, was formed in order to lower these trade barriers. The World Trade Organization is certain, monetary corporation organization that tries to make sure that the global economy is protected. There are multiple multinational corporations that have formed, including OPEC, or the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries in the Middle East, in order to ensure that their interests are protected. So in the area of the economy, there have been multiple developments to try to make sure that regional economies are, experiencing prosperity, and that the world economy is experiencing prosperity. For example, back in 2008, when we had our economic recession, the world was affected because we have all of these ties with other countries through multinational corporations and through trade and through exports and imports. So it's all increasingly interconnected, and we all have to develop some type of a view or a way of doing business that promotes these interests. And so the next E in our acronym stands for the environmental effects of globalization. And this is one that you can expect to see on the New York State Global Regents exam without a doubt. As a result of this increased industrialization, our population increases, and our urbanization. There have been detrimental environmental effects. As you know, the population gets bigger every year and grows exponentially. With more and more people on the planet, there's less resources to go around. With more and more people on the planet, we need more jobs, so people move to the cities to find those jobs, so urbanization. And they need more things, so industrialization, we're making more things. Desertification, deforestation, pollution are all things that, we have to be concerned about now that there is an increasingly human footprint on the planet, you could say. The green revolution is also something of importance here. As a result of all of this stuff, people have tried to, rotate a mixture of pesticides and natural ways of doing things in order to promote food productivity or increase the amount of food that is produced. There's controversy surrounding the green revolution, the use of pesticides, the use of GMOs, and all of these things and their impact on the environment are contested. And so that's something too that we have to think about when we think about the effects of globalization. And the last little part of our acronym, or S in FEES, stands for the social effects of globalization. As our world has become interconnected economically, politically, and environmentally, because we all have to care about the world that we live on, because if something happens to the world, we don't have anywhere else to live yet. Socially, we have also become interconnected. A lot of people discuss now how there has been a cultural homogenization, meaning that there has been a development of a world culture. For example, you see across different countries of the world, McDonald's. Everybody knows what McDonald's is now. That's something that you can see in every country. And so certain Western ideas and practices have been adapted as a result in other parts of the globe. While some see this as a lack of diversity, we have to think about how this homogenization affects people in these different countries and their traditional cultures and ways of doing things. And so that's one thing we have to focus on in the area of social effects of globalization. Another social effect of globalization, for example, is how quickly we can exchange information. With the development of the technological age, I can send a tweet, I can make a post on Facebook, or I can post something on my website, and immediately people all across the globe can see it. And so when there's that instantaneous exchange of ideas and information, there's another level of cultural homogenization, and that, in a sense, can pose a threat to, national security, which influences our foreign policy, and also influences our interdependence economically. For example, when certain things happen abroad, like, for example, when the UK left the EU, you could see in our stock market, our stocks dropped very dramatically at that time. And it was instantaneous because the exchange of information was instantaneous. However, being able to quickly, move across the globe and get information across the globe does have consequences. For example, infectious diseases. I don't know if you guys have watched any of the recent TV shows now, or movies. I think one of them was called, there's so many different ones. But all it takes is a sick person to get on an airplane, and then a disease goes into an entirely different country. For example, the Zika virus is one that has been frequently discussed. I believe Ebola was another one that has been recently discussed in the media. All of these different diseases can spread over vast areas very quickly because of our increased globalization, because of how quickly we can move from place to place as a result of technology. So as a result, you can expect to see questions about that, about the development of the AIDS virus, and all those types of social impacts of globalization on the New York State Global Regents exam. All of that being said, there are a couple of topics that you can generally expect to see on the New York State Global Regents exam. I would make sure that you pay attention to how humans impact their environment and humans impact their geography, global warming, the controversy surrounding GMOs, and the environmental effects of our growing population are things that you can generally expect to see. In the areas of our economic and I guess foreign policy interconnectedness and interdependence, you can expect to see information about the WTO or the World Trade Organization, NAFTA, the European Union, OPEC, multinational corporations, non-governmental organizations or NGOs. All of those things you can definitely expect to see on the Regents as well. Another very common topic that you can see being discussed on the Regents has to do with global inequality. Something that comes up very frequently is how AIDS and I guess income inequality and wealth inequality affects different cultures across the globe. And, they include documents very frequently on the DBQ, to the best of my understanding. So those are some frequent topics surrounding globalization that you can expect to see on the Regents. As always, have no fear, Mrs. T is here. I'm here to help you all along the way, and I wish you the best of luck with your exams.